Alright team, today we are looking at solving quadratic equations, but this time using factorisation. So last week we looked at types 1, 2, 3 and 4 quadratics and how to factorise them, and that skill is going to be useful for what we do today. So remember your types 1 and 2, they ended with a plus, so the bracket, when you factorise you could have brackets with both pluses or both minuses, and then types 3 and 4 had a minus c at the end, and so that means that the signs were going to be mixed in your brackets. So just remember those rules, and we're going to apply those today. So the first question I've got here is x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0, and I now need to figure out what x is. Now I'm going to factorise. So this is a type 1 quadratic plus, which means straight away that I know my brackets are going to be x plus something, x plus something, and that will be equal to 0. Now I think of my factors of 4 that add to 5, so I've got 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Obviously it's going to be x equals 1 and x equals 4. Now we're ready to solve the equation. This means this whole thing times this whole thing. Whatever's in that bracket times whatever's in that bracket. Now, how can you make two numbers multiply together to equal 0? What times what gives you 0? Well, 0 times something is 0. So there are two ways that we can make this equal to 0, this whole thing. One of them would be if we said that x is equal to minus 1. Minus 1 plus 1 is 0. 0 times whatever this would be is 0. Okay, so if we put a minus 1 in here, that bracket becomes 0, and minus 1 plus 4 is 3. So we'd have 0 times 3, which is 0. Or the other way that we could get a 0 is by making this bracket end up being 0. And that bracket would end up being 0 if x was equal to minus 4. So the solutions to this equation are minus 1 or 4. And you can chuck it in here. Let's say minus 1 squared is 1. 5 times minus 1 is minus 5. 1 plus 4 is 5. Minus 5 is 0. And the same would work with minus 4 as well. So essentially, when you're factorised, you look at this number here and its sign. You change the sign and write that number, and that'll be one of the solutions. Let's take a look at this next one here. Now what have we got? We've got x squared minus 7x plus 12. We've got a positive sign at the end, which means that we must have the signs must be the same in our bracket. So this is a type 2. So it should be something like this with both minuses, because we're going to have minus times minus to give us this 12. Now we think of our factors of 12. I'm going to write my factors of 12 here. 1, 12, 2, 6, 4, 3. If they're all negatives, which they've got to be, minus 1 and minus 12 is minus 13, so that's not going to work. Minus 2 and minus 6 is minus 8, that's definitely not going to work. Minus 4 and minus 3 are minus 7. So I've got a minus 4 here and a minus 3. So now I'm ready to solve my equation again. I've got to make these brackets equal to 0 to make it work out to 0, because if I can make this equal to 0, 0 times whatever's in that will be 0. Or if I can make this bracket equal to 0, 0 times whatever is in that will be 0, because 0 times anything is 0. So if we make x equal to 4, you can see that this whole bracket here would be 0. 4 minus 4 is 0, and 4 minus 3 is 1, so we'd have 0 times 1 is 0. Or, in this case, we could say x equals 3. Now if x is 3 here, 3 minus 3 is 0. 3 minus 4 is minus 1. Minus 1 times 0 is 0. So those are the two solutions to the equation. Now let's move on to 3. Here we have a minus at the end, which means we're dealing with either a type 3 or type 4, and since we've got a positive here, it's a type 3. So I know that I'm going to have one positive and 1 negative, and the positive will be higher than the negative. So I look at my factors of 24. What are my factors of 24 that I could use here? So I got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. And with types 3 and 4, this will tell you the difference between your numbers. So types 3 and 4, this number here is the difference. Now it's obviously 3 and 8 in this case. And since we need a positive 5 here, we're going to go positive 8 minus 3. And we can do a quick check to make sure that we've factorised that correctly. X squared, firsts, outers, x times minus 3, inner, so minus 3x, and then inners, 8x, minus 3x plus 8x is 5x, and minus 3 times 8 is negative 24. Now, we're ready to solve the equation, so we've got two values for x. X could equal, in this case, if we make this bracket add to 0, x could equal to minus 8. Minus 8 plus 8 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. Or, what would it be in this case? If we want to make this bracket equal to 0, x would have to be 3. So those are our two values. Now this last one is a little bit different. You'll notice that I've got an equal sign here. I can't factorise it till everything is across to one side. I can't solve it till everything is across to one side. You're going to get a few like these in your exercise today. So I'm going to move everything across to the left hand side. So I subtract 8x from both sides, and I subtract 9 from each side. And I get to this point here. Okay, now this is type 4. So I'm going to have bracket with a positive, bracket with a negative, and 0. And I've got to think of my factors of 9, which add to 8, minus 8. So we've got 1 and 9, and 3 and 3. And you can see straight away that it's going to be 1 and 9. The difference between those is 8. And because we've got a negative here, that means our bigger number is going to be negative, and our smaller number is going to be positive. And now finally we are ready to solve the equation. So we've got two values for x to make this whole thing equal to 0. X could be minus 1, couldn't it? Minus 1 plus 1 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. Or the other option is 9, because if we put a 9 in here, 9 minus 9 is 0. 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 times 0 is 0. So I hope that makes sense to you, what you're doing today. When you get these brackets, you take this number here, make it the opposite sign, and that will be one of your solutions if you've got a bracket times a bracket equals 0. Alright team, good luck. Fire any questions that you have to me in ThinkWave or on the email that I've given you. Have fun, good luck.